Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today in this lecture I'll be continuing my discussion on sons and lovers. So as I have already discussed chapter 5 of part 1 of the novel, today in this lecture I'll be discussing and analyzing the significant aspects of chapter 6, or the final chapter titled as Death in the Family, of book 1 of the novel. So without any further delay, let's get into the discussion. As far as chapter 6 is concerned, it is titled as Death in the Family. So with a very brief sketch of the youngest son, Arthur, who is seen growing up, that he is a very quick, careless and impulsive boy at the same time, and he, to a great extent he resembles his father. So we are provided with a very brief sketch of the youngest son, Arthur, and then a reference is also made to the fact that he has won a scholarship to the grammar school. But basically this chapter will again concentrate on William. So the mother figure, Mrs.Morel, is also loved by Arthur, but sometimes she gets really, tired of him, because he thought only of himself. When he wanted amusement, all that stood in his way he hated, even if it were his mother. When he was in trouble, he moaned to her ceaselessly. So basically, you can see a resemblance between Arthur and Mr. Morel. And as far as Mr. Morel is concerned, we find that his manners get worsened, day by day. He becomes more furious, and now his condition is such that he appears to be a disgusting figure to his own children. And his presence only, caused irritation, annoyance to their souls. And then we find a little information is also given to us by Lawrence, where he says that Annie is still a junior teacher in the board school, and she's earning 4 shillings a week, but soon she would begin to earn 15 shillings because she has passed her examination, and then there wouldn't be any financial trouble in the family. So the important episode in this chapter is that Mrs. Morel, in the absence of William, has completely, clung to Paul. She has now become completely attached to Paul, who has grown up to be a very quiet, brilliant man. And he is very fond of, like I said, I have already mentioned in my lecture that he is fond of painting, but he is also very much attached and has much intimacy with his mother. And whatever he did every little thing for her sake. So it is mentioned in the novel that everything he did was for her. She waited for his coming home in the evening, and then she unburdened herself of all she had pondered, or of all that had occurred to her during the day. He sat and listened with his earnestness. The two shared lives. So we find that how Mrs. Morel and Paul, they share each and every event in their life with each other on a regular basis. When Paul returns from his work, he shares each and every thing related to his life, related to his work with his mother, and the same is done by Mrs. Morel as well. Like whatever she has contemplated all over the day, whatever she has pondered, whatever thoughts have lurked in her mind, the very moment he returns from his work, she begins to share everything with him. And as far as William is concerned, at the present moment, William is engaged to Lily, or Louisa, and it is during Christmas that we find that William brings her fiancée Lily to their home for Christmas. But then the thing is, we find that this girl, behaves in a very superior manner, in a fashion of queenly superiority to his family, trying to portray or project herself as someone who is very superior to them. And then we find that she continues to pay visits to the Morels, and with passing time, William begins to resent her. In one for an instance, we find when she is asked to read a book, she is unable to read it. Lily is unable to read it, and that makes William understand her lack of intellect, her lack of intelligence. So it becomes increasingly clear to us that how William, begins to resent her, hate her, and at the same time, she finds her to be someone who is very petty, and trivial at the same time. And therefore, when he finds that his mother, Mrs.Morel, also dislikes her, and gradually, whatever she says, he also gets influenced by her words, and he becomes, extremely outspoken in criticizing Lily for her drawbacks. As far as the story or the story of Mrs. Morel and Paul Morel, the story is concerned, we find that there is an intervening episode in this chapter where they pay a visit to the Livers, the Willie farm, and there Paul meets for the first time the Livers family, which consists of the Livers, Edgar, Maurice, and above all Miriam, with whom later on he would get engaged in a relationship. And in the meantime, after this meeting that takes place between Mrs. Morel and Lily, William gets disappointed, and he also begins to hate her for her, like I said, for her lack of intelligence and all, and he returns to London. And in the meantime, he falls badly sick, and for 2 days he's left all alone in his room, which also throws light on the darker side of life or urban life in London, where William is left all alone and there is none to take care of him in the urban area. And then immediately when she comes to know that her son is sick, she goes to London and nurses him as much as possible, but unfortunately William dies because of his brain fever. It seems as if although the reason he suffers from pneumonia, and it is not very much made clear by Lawrence as to what is actually the reason behind his death, but it is left open-ended for readers to figure out the reason. So it appears like as if his mind and his body was torn between his mind. He got torn between his mind and his body. On one hand, William is happy, rather he's happy to find that Lily lacks those qualities, which could have made her a competitor, for his mother. But then we find that he is attracted physically by this girl, but then he despises her for her lack of intelligence and also the moral fiber that he admires in his mother. Then we find that like I said, that although he has been drawn to her physically, but maybe he's also happy to think that no woman measures up to his mother, and therefore she does not challenge his feeling for his mother, because she lacks much compared to his mother. So as far as William is concerned, for him no woman measures up to his mother. So we can see that it is the impact or the suffocating impact of the relationship between him and his mother that doesn't allow him, to accept Lily as his life partner. And then after he dies, we find that William's death casts a devastating impact on his mother, Mrs. Morel, and she remains preoccupied with William's thought until Paul becomes seriously sick. He also gets afflicted by pneumonia, and it is found that he's almost on the verge of his death. It is only at that moment that Mrs. Morel realizes that she is going to lose her second son as well, and that makes her give her undivided attention to Paul Morel. Otherwise, you find that when she has, as far as a mother's instinct is concerned, Mrs. Morel has already witnessed Paul's health declining after having joined Jordan. It is her instinctive awareness, that actually makes her, pay a visit to the Willie farm along with Paul. But then ironically, what happens is that she gets so preoccupied with the thoughts of William that she doesn't even care about, or she completely becomes, oblivious, forgetful of her second son's needs. She only becomes aware, she only becomes conscious only when she is threatened with the realization that Paul might die as well. So this is a kind of, the effect. We also find that how a mother withdraws, all her attention when and how it turns out to be completely dangerous, completely fatal for her own son, when she forgets about the needs of her own son and gets completely lost in her own sad thoughts. So this is what we find in this chapter. And then we find that if we look at the relationship or the failure of the relationship between William and Lily, we find that the split is caused in William's love is because of his devotion to his mother, which becomes increasingly apparent. It becomes increasingly clear in this chapter, because when Lily comes and meets Mrs. Morel, it seems as if William begins to compare both of them, and he finds that Lily is much lacking compared to his mother. And although the relationship does not, survive, the relationship does not last, we find as if William is happy to find out that eventually Lily has turned up to be someone who is much below, or who is much inferior who is much inferior to Mrs. Morel as far as her qualities are concerned, and therefore she doesn't pose a threat to his feelings for his mother, and she doesn't even challenge Mrs. Morel's position or place in William's life. So we can see that how, this unnatural intimacy or this unnatural attachment between the mother and the son, as well as the suffocating impact of the suffocating love, or the suffocating, yes, of course, the suffocating love of Mrs. Morel makes William suffer, and it also takes toll on his mental health, therefore making him, suffer from a premature death. So after William dies, we find that when Paul is also on the verge of his death, he also gets, afflicted with pneumonia, like I said, that when she realizes that her second son might also die. So now, from this moment onwards, after she realizes that she might also lose, she might also end up losing her second son as well, that now Paul becomes, the cynosure in her life, the center of attraction, and all her attention, all her love now gets focused on Paul Morel. So from now onwards, when we will move on to the part two of this novel, we shall find that how Mrs. Morel, how Mrs. Morel's life would completely revolve around Paul Morel, and how Paul Morel would also, get affected by the influence or by the suffocating love of his mother. So with this, we come to the end of the analysis and discussion of the last chapter of part 1. I hope you like the lecture and you find it helpful. So if you really like it, if you really find the lecture helpful, do like it, share it, and please do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Until then, bye-bye.